In this video, we are going to be making the lift or elevator. We're going to use this blueprint trigger box that we created. Since we already created the trigger box, we can use that as a parent blueprint for our lift. So find your trigger box, right click, go to create child blueprint class. And then we're just going to simply name this one lift or elevator, your preference, and then double click on that. So it's going to bring you in here, and there's nothing in here other than this trigger box because we've inherited that from the parent. If you go to the construction script, you can see there's construction script and then parent construction script. So whatever the parent's doing, this child will do it as well. But children can be rebellious and you can make them do other things. So we got our trigger box over here with nothing in it. So we're going to create a lift. I'm just going to go to add component. We'll just put in a cube. I like to do cube or you could do like a sphere if you want to make it flat. I would stay away from plane. The only reason is if you do a plane, you can't make it any bigger on the Z. You can make it wider and longer, but you can't make it go up or down. And then we could just take our scale in here and make it fit the box how we want. Since this is going to be a trigger, since this is going to be a lift, I'm going to make it a little flat. I'm going to, let's see, we got 0.5 there. This is our scale over here, so we can turn that down and you can get more precise with it if you want. Make sure that it's inside the box because you want the player, if they're going to be going on the elevator, you're going to want them to make sure that whenever they're on the elevator, whatever part, they can activate it, unless you're doing something where you have like a trigger in the middle, which is a different thing. You need a different mechanism, but then you would only put the trigger on that. But we're going to put around this whole entire thing so that whenever the player walks onto any part of this platform, they can activate this this elevator. I'm going to rename this so it's not cube. I'm going to rename it lift. That's also personal preference. It'll be easier when you do your event graph to have it called lift instead of just cube. If you want, you can take the trigger. Not sure. Come on, W. Not sure why my W wasn't working. All right. You can move this up and down if you want. Since the lift is underneath the trigger, they're going to move together. If you don't want that, you can attach to the default scene like that. So now it's not indented, and now these are going to be separate. So now I can move that if I want. Purpose of that would be if you want to make this guy smaller, and then maybe just so it's right there. That's fine. That way, if your lift is underneath, you know, if the player is able to go under the lift, you don't want them to activate it once they overlap that box, if that was something you do. So we're just going to put it like that so it's covered in all the sides. Alright, so now we can go into our event graph, and we can get rid of these right here. We don't need those. We will use this event begin play, but not at this moment right now. So in our trigger, in the trigger box itself, I'm gonna undock that, move that there. If you go back to the trigger box, we created these trigger activated, trigger deactivated, and we have a couple of messages that it's sending out. So this trigger activated and trigger deactivated is what we're gonna focus on. They won't appear over here. You have to just have the knowledge of knowing that once you've created it, you can call it. So what we're gonna do, so you can look it up, event trigger activated, and it's there because we created it in this trigger box, so we're able to call it in another blueprint. All right, so we're going to do a few things. We're going to do something so you can decide if you want to make it movable on its own, if you want to make sure the player gives it an input. So we'll do a few different things. Right now I'm going to put out a branch. Just hold the B button and left click, or right click and search branch. Same thing. So we need a condition for this branch though. In this condition, we're going to say we're going to create a variable over here. Just hit the plus sign. We do want a Boolean for this one, so you can leave that red. And we're just going to call this execute. And we're just simply going to say, do we want this thing to actually execute or not? And we'll just say, yeah. All right. So we'll connect those two. So now, since we have this execute, we can say, hey, you know, when we do execute this, do this, and when it's not being executed, do this other thing. So I'm going to pull this back out, and this time instead of getting get, that's the get, we're going to do set. And I'm going to connect the true to that set. And then make sure this box is unchecked, because we'll do another one with a false one, and we'll do something different. So make sure that's unchecked for now. All right, now we're going to lay down another branch. Connect these two. You can create a variable in here like we just did, or you can do another option. You can pull off a pin and go to promote to variable. Same difference. You get the same result in a different way. This one we're going to call is locked. So this is just saying we're making this condition that, hey, if this is locked, then we don't want you to do this, or if it is locked, we want you to do this. So what we're going to do is right click, search for do once. Okay. This is going to say, hey, do we want to do this one time or more than one time? Meaning if you have the elevator, once your player gets on it, do you want it to go up and just stop and just leave it there, not give the player an option to go back down, or do you want the player to have an option to go up and down? We're going to connect this to the false. Sorry, that's wrong. The true is going to go to the do once. We need another branch. And then we're going to make this condition called operate once. So if this is checked, if we say, hey, operate once, then it'll be true, and it'll just do the one. If this is if it's not locked, then we're just going to do it once. If we want to operate once, we'll do it once. If we don't want to operate once, we won't do it once. The false is going to go into the branch, and then if the operate once is true, it's going to go to do once. If it's not true, we are going to send it to our timeline, which we have to create our timeline. So you can just right click and type in timeline, and there's this one, add timeline. If it shows up in gray, it's something you can just hit enter and select, and it'll pop up. We're going to name this movement, and then we're going to hook the complete up to play, and we're going to connect this false on the branch before it up to play. If you want to create a little extra node to make it easier to read, there you go. So the reason we're doing that is we're saying, okay, is this locked? If it's true, it's not going to do anything. It's locked. If it's false, then we'll ask it, okay, is this going to operate once or more than once? If it operates once, which would be true, then it'll go to do once, and this do once will make sure it only happens one time. If this operate once is not checked and then it's false, then we'll say, no, you can do it more than once, and then you can play it how you want. Now, we have to double click inside this movement. It's going to give you this empty graph. We're going to go to this add float track, and it's going to give you this new float track. And then just name this alpha. And that will be important here in a second, you'll see. So now while we're in this timeline, anywhere in this space right here where you have the 0, 0.25 in this gray area, this lighter gray area, right click and then select add key to curve float and do a second one. We're just going to do 2 of them. Now if you look, once you select these, they turn orange, and then you have your time and your value. For the first one, you're going to make your time and your value 0. And for the second one, you're going to make your time and your value 1. So this is just going to give us a float value of 0 to 1, 0% to 100%, essentially. You also have this option up here to autoplay, auto loop. That's personal preference. I'm going to leave those off for now. And then, actually, sorry, change this length to 1 as well. And then hit compile. And then you can go back into your event graph. If you accidentally click out of that, you can just double click your movement and it'll bring it back up. Okay, so when we created this alpha track, it creates this alpha node down here, which that'll be important here in a second. So now we have this update node. We're going to pull from here, give yourself a little bit of room. Go to set relative location. So we want set actor relative location, and we're going to do it just as an actor. You don't want it to be referencing the trigger box or anything else. Now something that's kind of cool that you can do is there's this set relative location right here, of course. If you selected a different one like set, you could do relative rotation or transformation. These will be obviously different. They'll do a different thing, but this part will be the same as far as you can do these individually by, once it's selected, like it's highlighted like that, right click, split struct pin. So now we can do these individually. The other way it'll kind of move it all as one, but you can now we have these individually, so we can make it only work on the X or only work on the Y or the Z. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to search for something, right click and search for something called a lerp. We're going to do the float lerp. And then if you hover over, it'll say linearly interpolates. So this is a linear interpolation. It essentially just goes back and forth from A to B. So it'll let you bounce back and forth. Just think about it that way, from start to finish, and that's what we're going to use it for. So you can highlight that one, and then you can hit Control W, and it'll give you a duplicate of that. And so we're going to do 3 of them. And then we're going to take one of them, plug in the X, take the other one, plug in the Y, and then the last one into the Z. Just make sure that when you do this, that you name your variables properly. Because what we're going to do here, actually I'm going to give myself a little more room. Select these, you can move them out. And then each one of these, A's and B's, not the alphas, just the A's and B's, I'm going to pull a pin out. And I'll go to promote to variable. And then if it's hooked up to the X, and on this first one I'm going to name start X. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other. Sorry, they're always going to like kind of bunch up like that for some. They always go to the like a top portion. And the second one I'm going to go to end X. And then I'm going to do the same thing for Y and Z. You don't have to put the underscore there. It's kind of just have it for me. You'll notice if you put the underscore in there, though, it'll automatically kind of do a space. All right. So now we're going to do something a little different. We're going to select all this stuff and hit Control C for copy. And then we're going to go into this other tab here, the construction script. So we're going to go in there, and then we're just going to Control V. Bring this over here. We're going to connect this parent construction script right into the set relative location. And then over variables, add a new variable. We're going to call this one preview. Now it automatically set it to a boolean, so we have to come up here, and we're going to change this one to a float. Now this one's going to be our preview, so we can put the lift in the level, and then we'll have our start position, and then we'll have where it's going to end. And we want to preview that so we can see exactly where it's going, so we don't have to guess and keep hitting the play button and going into the game. Now, the one thing you have to remember is we need a range, though. We want this alpha to be from 0% to 100%. So under your slider range over here, just put 0, and then go into the next box, and 1. So this is going to be a value of 0 to 1, 0% to 100%. So what we can do, you can do it on all these if you choose, but really the end one is the one that we're really going to need. This makes it instance editable, so you can edit it while you're in the program in your map. And we want to do the preview one too. Hit compile, and so now once you hit compile, it's going to show it up over here. We're going to have a default value. We'll just leave it at 0. Pull this out, the preview variable we just created. Hit get preview, and this preview is going to hook up to all of these alphas. And the reason for that is, once we pull this in here, it's not letting me for some reason. Okay. But you have this preview here, and we can raise it so you can see now it's going to go up and down. So that's what that preview does. Let's go. So we got compile, go back into your event graph. And then we're going to use this event begin play that we had over here. We're going to need another one of these set actor relative locations. So I'm going to Control W that, and I'll bring that up here. From this event begin play, pull out a node, and then type in set play rate. So we want this timeline one. I had to take the context off. So when I did that, I took this context sensitive off. And then we want the timeline one. I'm going to connect the event begin play to the set play rate. And then we need this movement. That's what our target's going to be, because we want this play rate to be whatever our movement over here is. And then we can adjust the time under the actual rate. So if you don't see your movement here, hit this components button and it should drop down, and you should have your lift mesh and then your movement component, and then pull that into the graph and hit get, and then connect that to our target. And then we're going to want to determine what our new rate is. You could set it here, and then it'll always be just that, and every time you want to adjust it or make it different, you will have to come back into this blueprint. So we don't want to do that. We want to make it a little easier for ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide by time. And all you're going to do, if that sounds odd, is just hit the back button. I'm sorry, not the back button, but the backspace button, or the forward slash, I should say. And then you want float divided by float. So these will all give you like a divided by. That's a divided by symbol. So you have byte by byte. We want float by float because we're going to do time. So we want a number that can do, you know, seconds, minutes, milliseconds. We need a fraction. So off the bat, it's going to be a little confusing because we actually want this top number right here to be 1, because everything's going to be 1 divided by, and then that'll give us our fraction or our time. So what we can do now is we can create a float that'll interact with this. So come back down to variable, hit plus. It's already a float because the last one we made is a float. And then we're just going to do the duration. So you can name this move duration. And then I'm going to make that instance editable so I can use it when I'm in the map, so I don't have to keep coming back here. Get move duration, and then connect this one to that. Hit compile, and it'll bring up your move duration over here. So you can set this if you want. If you want it to start at 1, you can do that. I would probably just leave it at 0. That way you know. Actually, if you left it at 1, then it will definitely move immediately. So that's personal preference. If you start and you hit play and it's not moving, well, if your move duration is 0, it has no value, so it's not going to move at all. So that's just something you have to remember. If you set the move duration to 0, it won't do anything. So if we can, we'll just set it to 1 then, just to make sure. So if I hit play, I'm not confused when it doesn't do anything. So we've already duplicated this relative location. We can plug that in, and then we need to make the target that we want, though, to be our lift. We're going to plug that in there. Whoops. I apologize. This is not actually supposed to be target as actor. We just want the set relative location, not the actor one, sorry. It should say scene component. This one says actor, scene component. We'll get rid of this one. You'll know real quick if you've made a mistake like I just did, because I pulled this lift in here and it won't attach to the actor because it's not an actor, it's a mesh. So as soon as I saw, I was like, oh, okay, wait, it's not an actor. So pull that lift in to there, put that into there, and then just make sure that all these are connected again. Sorry. So I'm gonna right click, split structure, connect those in properly. And because I did that over here, I have to do the same thing. I'm going to Control C that one to copy it, Control V to paste it. I'll delete that one, and then we'll just rehook up everything. Okay. It's not a scene component. Lift. And now my error's gone. So make sure you bring out your lift component and attach it to the target in this scene component. And make sure that is a targeted scene component. I made a mistake and put actor component the first time. And then compile. So obviously if when I didn't have that lift attached, I hit compile, it gives me an error, and it's like, oh, yeah, what did I forget? It's not a scene component. You must have a target. Oh, okay. So in this case, my target's going to be the lift. And then once I hit compile, that error message went away. It lets me know I'm all good. All right, so we got the lift there. So all this is compiled now. Let's go back in. Okay, so now it's working. See, the before it wasn't pulling up because I had the wrong relative location. So when I had the actor, it was messing it up. So now I can put my, let's do that. Just pull your lift in. You can move it all around. And so we have these instance editables over here. That's what these are. These ones that we put the eyeball on are now what we can use over here. If I take the eyeball off, then you can't do it. If I take this move duration off, compile, now it's not there. So depending on what you create, if you want the level designer to have access to it, then you'll put the eyeball on. If you don't want them to, then you'll just take the eyeball off. And there's different reasons for why you may or may not want to. If everything's working on maybe you have a platform that's moving and you have specifically designed it to be in the same time, space, length as the character's jump, maybe then you don't want, you know, the person in the level to mess with that time, because if the time's off, then, you know, then it could cause frustrations for the player or just the overall design of the level. There's plenty of reasons why. So right now, if I'm looking at this, and I'm going to adjust my trigger box here because I put mine just a little too high. It looked like it was lower than I thought. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to drop this down, compile, and now it's set my level. So the cool thing is, though, is we have this preview here. So if I turn this preview up to 100, up to 100%, now I can move this and see where exactly this is going to go. And then if I want, I can move this down. When I hit play, it's already on the ground again, because that was just a preview. And it should go up, but it's not. So what do we have? Let's go back in our event graph. And then we have these. So I need to do is locked, operate once. So I'm going to take off the is locked, take off the operate once. Do we have a move duration of 1? But it's not going anywhere. Okay. I'm going to bring out this execute. I'm going to make it a set. Connect it to the false. I'm going to click on that execute button. I'm going to create a variable called is player gone. I'm going to make this one a Boolean. I'm going to make it, put the eyeball on, bring that in, get, and I'm going to make a new branch. And I'm going to make this is player gone the condition. And then I'm going to go to true, and I'm going to go to trigger, activate it. sorry, I want trigger deactivated. We're going to call that function. And then down here, just right click somewhere else, event trigger deactivated. I'm going to hook this up to a delay just so it takes a few seconds for it to come back. And then I'm going to hook this up to the reverse. And what we can also do is we can, instead of having this duration always be 0.2, I'm going to pull that off. Make sure your context sensitive is on. Hit promote variable, promote to variable. And then I'm going to put time until reverse. And then I'm going to hit instance editable, and I'll hit compile and save so it shows me. So now I can see if it's coming back when the player leaves. Now running into a problem where it's not actually moving for some reason. We have a preview, we know it should go up. We have our duration. Time until reversed. Let's set that to 10 just for now. Actually, this is player gone. I'm gonna hide that one. So now we need to figure out why it's not actually moving up. So it's not locked. It operates more than once. We're all good on everything else. And the preview lets us know that, hey, it should go up and down. So there must be something going on between our trigger box and our lift. Trigger activated. Okay, so I put the execute with the player gone. We got our trigger deactivated. Target is BPI lift. Right now, it is working. But it's not working the way that we want. I know it's working because when I entered the trigger box, it says hello. I put that message in there. But when I walk off, it doesn't do anything. And then when I walk back on, it's working. So it is working, but not the way we want it. When I get off, it reverses. But it shouldn't be checking for it twice. So I'm going to find out why it's doing that, and then I'll be back. Okay, terribly sorry about that. It was, something very simple. Can really screw you up, so you really have to pay attention to your blueprints when doing this, and the logic will help you make more sense, because as soon as I was looking at it, and it's all the same. I've done this several times before, and the one thing I didn't do and I failed to do, click on this execute button, or if you click on that, it might not show up. Click on this execute button if you have to. Because you have this is a execute get, this is execute set. So we want to make sure this execute, this one down here, make sure this checkbox for the default value is checked. Okay, that'll make all the difference, because what it was doing is it wasn't sure if we were executing or not the first time we activated it. So then the second time, for whatever reason, it was actually activating. So if I hit play now, I just jump on it and it'll go up. Now, the only thing with this one is this elevator right now won't drop until I jump off. And then there's a delay on it, and then it'll drop. The delay is going to be this time until reverse, which if you go in here, it is this node right here. It's that variable. So by default, I have it at 0.2. So if I just hit this little arrow over here, time until reverse, 0.2. So now as soon as I jump, it'll get off. So that's the basic lift there. We can later on maybe put in something so it has an input to where you can make it go up and down. That we'll do that another time because that'll involve more of the third-person character blueprint. And I want to kind of stop this here so it's only about 30 to 40 minutes instead of going an hour long. Okay, I am going to edit this video so it's hopefully seamless for you. Sorry about any mistakes. I did go over them. So if you follow it from start to finish, you'll see that I made a mistake with the set relative location. It needs to be scene component. I accidentally put set actor relative location, so don't make that mistake. But you'll see me correct it in the video regardless. All right, so if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask after I post the video, obviously, and after you watch it. And the other thing is, if you want, it's always good. It's already in my TriggerBox. I added this print string for the hello, and you can make it say whatever you like. But I did that so that whenever I enter anything that has a trigger box, if you look in the top left of your screen, it'll say hello. So look at the top left, right underneath where it says lighting needs to be rebuilt, it'll say hello. There you go. Okay, so now for some reason it's going down, but I have to walk over it twice for some reason. So I'll have to figure that out. There might be another delay on there. Because we got the time until reverse delay. Got the movement. So we'll look into that later. But for right now, that'll be absolutely good enough for what you need. Because at the very least, you can walk on it, get on it, and then walk to another level. And then if you jump off, it'll reset. All right. Have a great day.